an element that really doesn't like us because we're Christians anyways, that said, see there, that's why they're not the answer to this problem. Because look at that, it's their rules that are causing all of this. It's because of all their rules, and these guys, they just want to jam religion down everybody's throat. And I'm like, I don't know if you ever heard us tell you about Jesus, but you can't jam stuff. You can't jam Jesus down anybody's throat. It just doesn't work that way. So I'd always tell them, look, you don't have to be a Christian to stay here. In fact, if you're not, all the more welcome. Come on in. We'd love to have you. And look, you do have to sit and listen to people say things to you that you might disagree with. But man, don't we need more of that, the ability to do that in our world? Right? I mean, isn't that kind of one of the problems that we were seeing? I mean, everybody was just losing their minds on each other, especially on social media. Everybody was just becoming more and more radicalized. I mean, we were seeing this happening over a mask. My goodness. I had friends and family that suddenly wanted nothing to do with me. Wanted nothing to do. People that knew me since I was this big, and suddenly I'm a Nazi. Like, man, isn't it crazy? You notice that calling somebody demonic or satanic is no longer the worst thing that you can call somebody anymore. Now, he's like Hitler. There's the bad guy. This guy has been dead for like 90 years. And but we're terrified of being associated with him for some reason. And like he's the big boogeyman that's going to come out and get it. And the worst that they can think of is actually Adolf Hitler instead of the devil. I'll tell you why. Guys. It's because the church isn't having the impact that it used to have anymore. Because we stopped preaching about the devil. We stopped talking about the devil's a problem. And he's really the enemy of your soul. And he's really looking to seek and kill you and devour you and these kinds of things. And so we stopped being salt and light. And look, culture is downstream from worship, right? I mean, culture contains the word cultus, right? It's from what you worship. Okay, we're in this condition because the church is just not preaching a hot gospel anymore. Can you imagine when the next time? Can you imagine your pastor actually getting threatened to being sent to jail because of something he said? Yet every one of the disciples, every one of them, spent some time in prison. Every one of them did, and so I'm like, hey, look, man. I mean, I am in. I have not done jail ministry, and I look good in orange. Let me tell you. So I am. Lock me up. So or am I saying no? So we go. So we're looking at this thing that's happening in our culture, in our community, and my task has been this. I want to give words to the community because everybody keeps asking these questions. They keep asking these questions, and they play this constant game with what's the solution to homelessness? Okay, and of course they expect me as a Christian to just say Jesus, and it's true, but then you got to answer how. How is that the solution? And when you start dealing with homelessness, the minute that you start talking on any one answer, they're going to shift the question around. The minute that you start saying, they go, well, it's a mental illness problem. And you go, well, yeah, I do think you have to be crazy to want to live out there for any length of time. But that's a big deal, and we don't have the infrastructure anymore to deal with mental illness the way we used to and everything. And then somebody will go, as soon as you start going, but let's start building something. Let's start crafting. What would that look like to deal with that? Somebody's going to go, well, they're not all crazy, Brian. There's addiction issues going on, right? And I go, yeah, I think those two kind of go hand in hand. And not only that, but I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to tell you that homelessness and addiction and mental illness are all symptoms. They're all symptoms of a broken relational, a broken way of seeing our world. These guys ran out of relationship long before they ran out of money, and they really found their way into this problem a lot. They were working on getting to the Gospel Rescue Mission for a long time. So we, April comes, June comes, the Supreme Court, it's the last decision that they give, and they say, we agree with the city of Grants Pass. It's not cruel and unusual punishment. It's neither cruel nor is it unusual. And that when somebody breaks a law, that when a city decides to set a rule or a code of conduct for their city, that the city should have the right to establish those rules, and that if a fully functional tax-paying citizen decides to violate those rules, you can prosecute them. And if a homeless person decides to break those rules, you can prosecute them too. That being homeless is not a protected status. And that it's not you're not some kind of minority for being homeless. It's not a permanent part of your condition of who you are. And so this is the way that they understood this. They handed it down as a victory for the city of Grants Pass, and the city of Grants Pass promptly snatched defeat right out of the jaws of victory. They went in and decided they wanted to establish a city-run tent camp. And the reason, obviously, they said, well, we've already discounted the Gospel Rescue Mission. We can't make them go there, and we can't endorse the Gospel Rescue Mission because they're religious. So what we're going to do is we're going to solve the problem. We're going to solve the problem that God can't solve for some reason. So we'll create our own little tent camp and everything. Okay. Well, here's the problem that happens when that happens. When a municipality creates something, they have to create it perfectly. If they don't create it perfectly, then they can be sued. And so so we had this great big parking lot right down in downtown Grants Pass that was a gravel parking lot. And you can't get a walker, you can't get a wheelchair in there as easy, and you certainly can't get around in the gravel on crutches as easy. So, same group files a lawsuit against the city, and a local judge has filed an injunction against the city, saying you're not helping, you're not disabled accessible in all of this. And I keep telling them, well, look, you can't be sued for something you're not doing. So I would argue, don't do it. Don't open a tent city. But here's another option for you. Let the Gospel Rescue Mission run it. Because I don't know if you guys know, but the ADA laws are broad and wide exemptions for religious organizations. I don't have to be ADA compliant, and neither do you. You're not required to. You have massive legal exemptions for ADA compliance. But again, that gets us back into the problem that we had. Oh, well, they're religious, and we can't have that. We can't have that situation. So they're just stuck in this perpetual cycle of trying to solve the problem. Like everybody that tries to solve the problem without God, they're just going to continually put Band-Aids on a arterial bleeding, and they're slowly bleeding themselves to death. In the meantime, we're probably, in a 78-bed men's facility, I've got about 45 guys in there today. In the 60-bed women and children's facility, that has been for years, has been maybe decades, has been, it was not uncommon for me to have 25 moms and 30 kids in. Has for the last 5 years had like 10 moms and 4 kids, or something in that kind of a line. In addition, when COVID funds came out, there was a lot of money that was just spent on hotel rooms, and it was combined with, there was a lot of relief from all the forest fires that came through Northern California, Southern Oregon. There was the Paradise Fire, there was Phoenix and Talent fires in Southern Oregon. About 4,000 homes were lost, about 11,000 structures were burned, over 1 million acres burned down. All kind of this perfect storm. So there's all this funding coming down, and wherever there's handouts of any kind, the homeless know right where to go. They just know right where to go, man. And they come in and go, oh yeah, yep. I know I was here 2 weeks ago before the fires happened, but now I'm here because of the fires, and everything. And so it was just, and the state, at least the state of Oregon is set up where you can't ask questions. If you ask questions, you're somehow breaking some kind of, you name it, DEI, HIPAA, some rule by simply asking for, can you show me your ID? Can you show me where you're from? And everything. So a lot of the folks that would normally have come in are now getting hotel rooms, and they're getting, and look, if you can stay in a gospel rescue mission where there's rules, and because we're designed to get you out of homelessness, or you can go somewhere where you got cable TV and housekeeping every day, and no rules at all, what you going to choose? Again, so we've been in this battle, and my feeling is that eventually the state monies will just, they can't last forever. They can't last forever. I'd say stupidity is not a plan. Things that are unsustainable are unsustainable. We were doing gospel rescue mission work. I was helping people out of homelessness long before anybody cared. Before anybody was ever interested in, there was no national media, not even hardly any local media attention to what we were doing. And I'm fine with that. I mean, I'd much rather go back to a day when no one's paying attention than you're just subtly working in and, plugging leaks in the ship, helping people find their way back into life again. And I'll tell you, there's nothing better to me than going anywhere in my community. I can go, if I go to Home Depot to get some new plant, I got some trees the other day to plant in our yard, and along the way, probably 3 people that were graduates of the mission all working there, and stuff. I stop by the gas station, there's somebody from the mission that's working there. I go over to Walmart to get my groceries, there's somebody from the mission that's working there. Lots of people working there from, whatever. This is the way that we see everywhere we go, all over the place. And they all, hey, Brian, and remember this? And I'll tell you, there's nothing more exciting to me. That's why I get up in the morning. Is I come into our town and I meet people and I see people whose lives were changed, and they go, remember when I was all strung out? I go, yeah. How long have you been sober now, man? They're telling me 6, 7, 8 years or whatever, and wow, and they go, oh, here's some pictures of my kids. Here's what's happening in my life, and it's good. And that's why you guys do what you do. That's why I do what I do. My thought is this. Look, you have the ability to be truly prophetic to your community, to be prophetic to the world around us. And what I found is that whenever I go to church, first of all, when they go, oh, you work for the gospel, where's the gospel rescue mission? And everything like that. Like, those big, anyways, they don't know, and you got to teach them all about it and everything. And they all, when they get done asking you about, well, I keep stuff in my trunk to give to people, and I do all this, and they tell you all these stories about how they're trying to solve it, and you're like, oh, do you really want to know what I think? And I try to give them like short, easy ways to understand, to see the world through a biblical lens, to see solving the problem is more than just handing them $10. And I can tell them, look, man, you can give that person at that who's holding up the sign, you give him $1,000 today. You won't get them. You're not going to get them out. You can give them $1 million today. I promise you, inside of 6 months they'll be homeless again. It's just going to happen. They're in the condition they're in. That's if all things stay the same. This isn't going to solve the problem. The problem isn't the need for money. The problem is they need a complete mind shift and change. They need to be transformed by the renewing of their mind, as Doc was saying. Yeah.
And knowing what you know now, what would you have changed through the process of the Supreme Court? What would you have done differently?
I'm not sure that I would have changed anything. I think one of the things that I would try to do for the community is remind them. In my community, we're out on the West Coast. I've got my brother from San Francisco here, and we know that there's a reason we're called the Left Coast, and it's we're swimming in socialism, and it is so deep and it's so thick in where we are, and they speak a different language, guys. They really do. And I would remind them this: that look, for a lot of our community, I've got this little tiny. We're in this little tiny kind of Bible Belt hub of the whole West Coast. I mean, there's like 60 churches in our county, and quite a few right in our city. It's a pretty neat little place. I would tell them two things. One is I would tell them to measure their expectations a little bit. This is the reason that they want you to change. The reason they want you to call a boy a girl and a girl a boy is not because they care whether or not it's true. The reason that they want you to say it is so that they can make you say it.
Yep.
Okay? And the minute that you say it, they're going to change it right back around to the other thing, and they're just going to measure the time and see if they can get you to say the other thing, whatever they want you to say, faster. So they're just trying to calculate the response time. They're just trying to see how fast you're going to change your mind. And the reason that this whole court case came about wasn't because anybody cared about Deborah Blake, who was the original name. It used to be Grants Pass versus Blake. Deborah Blake was, she'd stayed at the mission numerous times. She struggled with a bipolar disorder and just did not do well in group settings, and we live in dormitory environments at the mission and everything, and so she was so disruptive, and it took so much to manage her, and then when you add drugs and alcohol into it, it just exacerbates everything, right? Okay, it makes everything worse. Nobody cared about, nobody actually went, let's try and raise some funds to get Deborah a place to stay where she can go. Not one of them tried to care for her and pay for any of her real needs. And when she died, not one of them showed up to her funeral. Okay? Not one of them did. Okay? They don't care about, this isn't about, the lawsuits right now, it's not about the concern for the disabled. The issue, the only ones that are really working at this with a real heart concern that's looking to really solve the problem of the believers that are feet on the ground, really sweating this thing out. And everybody else, it's just ideology just getting thrown back and forth. I mean, we live in our problem we live in the most affluent time in human history, guys, and so we can sit and talk about round squares and stuff, and nobody throws you into a cell for it. We can sit and talk about, boys being girls and girls being boys. We think we can change reality, and we can talk about it, and there's no consequence to it. It's not like things were 200 years ago in our nation, or even 100 years ago in our nation. We are people of the Word. Words matter. And it's important that we use the right ones and that we give the right ones to our community and we tell them and you're going to have to create that messaging because the world's not going to give you the opportunity. The media is not going to give you that opportunity. You have to create it, but here's the beauty of our time, is that we have that. We have that ability to do that. We can get as direct as anybody out there in getting to the public, and that's the way to do it. Are there any other questions? Anybody else have any questions about that? I know I'm preaching to the choir, and all of that. Yeah.
Do you just avoid questions like housing first? I assume that's huge. It's huge everywhere. Do you just kind of avoid that discussion? Do you shift the discussion? Because you know the person is put in a home. You're just going to basically, some of these people, you're providing a way of death more quickly, quite honestly.
Right.
How do you navigate when someone addresses like the media?
Yeah.
What about housing first? And people like the lady, what was her name?
Deborah. Yeah.
Like, how would you address that?
Boy, I'll tell you what, I think that's an important thing of our time. And again, I think that this is something that you guys should all speak very clearly to. Use your social media influence. Use your voice for these things because they need to hear this. Because it works against what we're doing, right? I mean, housing first. I always try and I do one of two things. I tell them, immediately I'm not a housing first fan at all. Maybe a housing and kinds of things, but housing first. But a lot of times what I'll do is I try and get into their, take the antithesis, take what they're saying and drive it off the cliff for them, okay? So I go, if you really believed in housing first, let's just do a little thought experiment, okay? Let's take 2 years worth of the budget of HUD and the Department of Health and Human Services. In fact, we won't even need all of it. If we gave every single homeless person, if we said, let's say there's 550,000 homeless people in the United States, the number just keeps going up and up. Okay, but let's, for numbers' sake, 550,000 homeless people in the country. Give them, every single one of them, give them, with no strings attached, $500,000. Every single one of them. You can buy a home, you can build a home for $500,000. You could buy property and build a home. Now, what would that do to the economy? Let's go, you think about what's that going to do to the lumber economy? Well, it's going to go through the roof. How about appliances and furniture and everything? Oh man, it's going to be a blessing to the economy, right? And just sit there with them and go think about all this. And we really believe that housing first. But here's the thing: it's a one-time gift. We're going to solve the problem. 550,000. You're looking at like, I forget how many billion it is. It's something like, it's about $3 or $4 billion that you're talking about. Somebody can do the math for me. It might even be $25 billion. But even then, Health and Human Services is like it's a multi-trillion-dollar, average expenses. So do the math for them and just go, we'd solve the problem, right? If we really believed that boxes solved something, right? That being in a square something somehow solves the problem, and we did that first, throw a bunch of money at them but make it just go away. We'd solve the problem today, right? Now, when I sit and talk with socialists in my community, they're like, oh, yeah, but who's going to run it? Who's going to make sure? You're going to have to pay somebody to make sure that they do everything, right? And everything. Now, when I suggest something like this, I sit down with 70 guys in the Gospel Rescue Mission. I'll play the same game with them, and they just start laughing about halfway through what I've said, and they go, and one of them will just go, you know who's going to get all the money, right? And I go, well, I know who I think. Who do you think? He said, liquor stores and drug dealers. And I go, yeah, you think? You think that it's who's gonna solve? The homeless people will tell you it's a bad idea. They'll tell you it's a bad idea. Nobody believes really that housing first is the right answer, but they're married to the answer. Well, I say nobody believes it. Look, I know a lot of people that actually really do believe it, but but when you really push it and go, okay, let's do it. they start to, all of a sudden the cracks start opening up and they start realizing, but if we did that, then, well, what if they didn't use it for what they intended? Oh, are you telling me these people might do something other than what they're trying to solve a problem, other than the one that they're presenting to you? What? Yes.
I think we should use your story as a warning. Affordable housing across the country, and even Housing First, has run out of housing.
Yeah.
So this is, even in my little rural county, conservative county, they're proposing a legal tent city as we speak. I just left county commission meeting where they're proposing it.
Yeah.
And they're scared to death. And so I think that, some of the verses and things that I've heard you say, that we, Gospel Rescue, should be aware that this could be coming to your town near you in the near future.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be like, oh no, not us, no, you.
Mm-hmm.
And so where do we expect people to go? And that the homeless, we understand that the homeless are not boxed in by a definition. There's all kinds of people that end up in these places, and yes, it does draw people to these places. Our governor has passed a law that it is illegal for you to stay in, and that's why these tent cities are being proposed, because it's legal.
Mm-hmm.
It's illegal for you to camp anywhere if there are beds available. So for instance, by definition, your place right now, the tent, people in the tents could be arrested because you have beds.
Right. They should be able to do that in ours as well, but they discount us because we don't have Governor DeSantis.
But the world is broad spread.
Yeah.
And so because they see this coming, because they don't have an affordable housing solution, they know that the Housing First is not a solution.
Are you guys familiar with Edwin Friedman?
No.
Edwin Friedman, he wrote a book called Failure of Nerve, and it's worth a read. He also wrote a book called Friedman's Fables, and I'll give you a quick story, and then I'll go because we're probably way past time at this point. A guy goes across. Guy decides that he's gonna solve, or he's found his calling in life, and he finally decided he knows what God wants him to do with his life, and so he decides he's going to go into town to fulfill his purpose in life. But to get into town, he's going to cross a bridge. And this is really kind of interesting because in our town there's this bridge that goes over the river, so the story works really great. So he's crossing the bridge, and as he's crossing the bridge, it goes over this deep canyon with a raging river beneath it. And as he's crossing the bridge, he sees this guy coming towards him carrying a big length of rope. And he's walking up to him. And the guy walks up to him and says, "Hi, hey, would you mind holding the end of this rope for me?" Yeah. Well, he says, "Well, sure, I'll hold it." He notices that the other end of it's wrapped around the guy's waist, and he just throws himself over the edge of the bridge. So he holds on to the rope, and he's holding on, and it goes tight, and he's hanging on. Looks over, and there's the guy swinging. "Thanks." He says, "What'd you do that for?" He says, "Well, I sure appreciate you holding the end of the rope for me. Thank you." He says, "My hands hurt. This is hard." He goes, "Yeah, don't let go." It's just, "But you got to climb back up here." "I don't want to climb back up. I'm fine right here, thanks." He says, "Hey, I don't want to stand here and hold this rope. I've got other things to do. What would you do if I let go?" He says, "You wouldn't want that on your conscience. That'd be terrible. How would you sleep at night?" "Because I'd fall and die." So he's looking around to see if he can tie something off on. He's looking around for help. He can't find anything. Finally, the guy goes, "You might just tie it around your waist. That's what I did." He's looking, he's frustrated. And finally, he goes, "Look, I got things to do, and I'm not going to accept the responsibility for holding on to this rope that you just threw on me. So you either climb up, or I'm letting go. You don't want that on your conscience." then you'd be guilty of killing me. I'm not kidding. You better start climbing. No thanks. So finally, he lets go. Who's the bad guy in the story? Who's the bad guy in the story? Okay, this is exactly what's happened in the homeless situation. Okay? These people come into your community and they hand you the end of the rope. And they expect that the city, the citizenry of the city, hold on. And they're guilt tripping everybody in that city and making it their problem. The question is, well, if we don't let them stay here, where are they going to go? And they're holding you for ransom until you actually solve that problem. And I'm telling you right now, ladies and gentlemen, we're doing the work, right? We're saying, look, climb up here, and there's a safe spot for you. And if you do it, we'll get you out.
So are you getting people checking in from the tents?
No.
Are you evangelizing or outreaching to the tents? Do you need to? Do you want to?
A little bit. We've found nearly zero efficacy for outreach. I finally got a little card out there that just says, hot shower, warm, safe place to stay, 3 hot meals a day. What do you got to lose? The streets will always be waiting for you. Okay? So look, you can always go back to this.
Right.
You can always have all of this. It's all there. Or you can have this. Come on and have some.
So we know you're not going to solve homelessness as described.
Yeah.
So it sounds like to me, like Mark was saying, stay out of the discussion. Because this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to present Jesus to you because there's a soul problem here. There's not just a physical homeless problem.
That's why you need to be in the discussion. That's why you need to be in
I
the
think
discussion.
the church is important. We need to tell the church this. They need to hear this.
I
Believers that
agree.
don't know.
I agree. I think that this is it. I think the things that you guys are saying, the things that you guys are doing, is the voice that the church needs to hear. We've forgotten how to apply Scripture to all the rest of life, right? We believe that it's all of Christ for all of life, right? That He speaks to every area of life, and we're the place where we're putting that into practice because we're seeing we have to do it because we're dealing with somebody who's broken in all of life. Most of the pastors, golly, I love when I hear pastors go, man, I had another marriage counseling, another husband spending too much time watching football on Saturdays and Sundays, not spending enough time with his wife. And I'm going, man, that's a tough counseling job, Pastor. That's tough. And I'm glad you're there for them. I'm glad that you are there for that marriage, for bringing it together and everything. But let me tell you, I hear stories that would peel the paint off of your office walls. Okay, and my job is to keep a poker face and love on these people and walk them out of this darkness that they're in. And that's where you're at. Yeah.
Can I add one thing? So your story about the rope, I
Yep.
think, talked loudly, reminds me of the fact that the city, when they do the encampment, they're doing that.
Yep.
So there's an encampment responsible for safety. They won't keep it safe if they have rules like no drugs, prostitution, small things like that, like the rules you have.
Yeah.
We've already had tents burned down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had ours.
So I think in your city, when those discussions are happening, you have to have those discussions. You have to bring it to the city council. You have to tell them, like, here's what's going to happen. It sounds great. They don't hear that. That's the problem.
And it takes a lot of nerve. It takes a lot of nerve to say the kinds of things that we have to say.
have to say.
I mean, they're gonna look at you. They're gonna look at me, and you have to have a strong spine.
So I was just
Say.
invited to the
Yeah.
county commission meeting to
Yeah.
talk about exactly what you just talked about.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I have one more leverage.
Yep.
I have a drop-in center, and I told my mayor kindly, like, hey, if you have an encampment, I don't need a drop-in center. I can save $400,000 a year by closing it down because you're going to do it.
He's gonna do it for $4
for
million.
free. Yeah, he'll do it for millions.
Yeah, yeah.
And so he's decided not to, but we're gonna revisit it again every year, but at a
Guys,
little
we are-
leverage to say, look.
We are
I'm gonna
way
save money.
past our time.
No, you're
So,
doing good.
uh,
After. Thank you, Brian.
All right. Hey, guys, I'd be happy to talk to you at any point in time, and certainly grantspasmission.org, Brian at grmgp.org. I'll give you my card or whatever, and we can just carry on the conversation. I'm sure that you guys have more to teach me than I have to teach you, but I sure appreciate the opportunity.